Welcome back. We're going to look today at a little bit about relationships and guidance. This is a really important topic as teachers. We know that we play an important role in guiding the behavior of young children, and so we need to think about approaching behaviors that might be challenging as opportunities to help children problem solve and learn new skills rather than a nuisance. So what is guidance? Guidance is how we help children learn the expectations for their behavior in our classroom. It's the way that we help children know what it means to be a contributing member of our classroom community. It means helping them learn from their mistakes and make positive choices. And it's also important to think about, I think, what guidance isn't. I think guidance and discipline are often mistaken for one another, but guidance is not punishment. It's not about controlling children or making them fear us as teachers or adults. It's about knowing our students and creating the best physical and social environment that helps to promote learning and development. So what are the skills that we're hoping to help children employ while they're with us? We've got 5 essential skills that Dan Cartel identifies, and they are finding acceptance. As a member of a group, we want our children to feel a part of our classroom. We want them to be able to express emotions in non-hurting ways, to be able to solve problems creatively, whether that's by themselves or with the help of others, and accept unique human qualities that they see in their classmates. And lastly, thinking intelligently and ethically. Guidance, and more specifically positive guidance, helps promote the social, emotional, and cognitive development of children in our classrooms. When we intentionally support children's development through positive guidance, we're helping them really gain one of the most important skills that they're going to need for school success, but also lifelong success, and that's self-regulation. And self-regulation is the ability to control our feelings and our behaviors. So I have a little reflection I want you to think about. Can you think of a time when you were really angry? Did you control or regulate those feelings? Did it happen recently? Can you remember? What were the consequences? And what experiences have you had that have helped you learn to control your feelings? And as you reflect on that, I think it's important to connect this back to children, that it is a skill that we learn over time, and we have a responsibility as teachers to help children learn to self-regulate. Some of the short-term goals that we have for children as it relates to guidance is, of course, we want them to be safe in our environment, in our classroom. We want them to use the materials and the tools that we have in appropriate ways, and we want them to follow classroom rules. There's a really great video that I have linked at the bottom of the slide, and I'll make sure that it's in this week's modules, but it's from the Chicago Public Schools, and it's a specific elementary school that really embeds social emotional learning into everything that they do. And I love it as an example because so often I think we think of opportunities to teach about guidance and social emotional learning as isolated lessons or teaching moments, but really it should be embedded in everything that we do, because social emotional learning is really at the heart of all school success. And so I'll make sure and put that in the module and make sure and check that out. It's important that we realize that our communication is the model for children. And so we want to make sure that we are modeling respectful and authentic speech. That means that when we are listening, we're truly actively listening, seeking to understand rather than just hearing and reacting. We need to also respond appropriately and calmly and warmly to children. And lastly, we need to use I messages. Some examples of I messages might be, I feel angry when you throw the blocks, or I feel hurt when no one asks what I want to do, identifying your feelings and the specific behaviors that are attached to them. We know that for children, being able to listen and follow directions or instructions, managing their emotions and actions, and just peacefully coexisting with other classmates is essential for meaningful and successful participation in the classroom. When students aren't able to manage those behaviors, they can become frustrated or they might become disappointed, and that really influences their relationships with others and their feeling of acceptance and overall quality of their experience in our classroom. And that matters because we want children to feel like they can connect with us as teachers and to build positive child-teacher relations. And so to do that, we foster that by engaging in one-on-one interactions with children on a daily basis, right? Not just in group time. We're going to get down on the child's level so that we can see each other and communicate face to face. I talked earlier about having that calm voice, having that warm, secure attachment where children feel welcome and valued. And we also want to acknowledge children for their accomplishments and their efforts. So now let's talk about conflict resolution. What do we do when conflicts do arise, which they inevitably will? I think the way I like to look at conflict is first as prevention. We always want to look to prevent conflicts from beginning in the first place. We might look at the environment. We might look at certain triggers that seem to happen, maybe with specific students, or again, back to different parts of the day or in our environment. And we want to seek to resolve conflicts peaceably and help ultimately model for children how to resolve conflicts. You'll see this picture on the slide I have of some persona dolls. I love persona dolls, and I use them in some of my other classes when we're in face-to-face. They're really a wonderful way to help foster social emotional skills in children. They can also teach social skills, conflict resolution, problem solving, and foster skills that might be needed to stand up against teasing or any other types of bias that might surface in our classrooms. Persona dolls can also help our students explore family structures, especially ones that we may not have present in our classrooms. It helps them to also just learn classroom rules and common values by utilizing these dolls to maybe think through and problem solve with different maybe reoccurring challenging behaviors that we see in our classroom or challenges that we're having connected to our routines or rules. We know that mistaken behavior absolutely interferes with children's cognitive, their social, and their emotional development. When children are not able to regulate their feelings and their emotions, they're not able to process the information, the learning that's happening in the classroom. It's also harmful to children, to the other children in the classroom that might be subject to those behaviors that are exhibited by a child that's feeling out of control or unable to regulate. And also puts a child at a high risk for later social problems. And I think that's the most important piece to remember, that we have a responsibility as early childhood educators to give children these strategies that are going to help them to be successful in our classrooms, but also throughout their lives. So let's move on to some strategies. Before we can really look and delve into these strategies, I think it's really important that we recognize that our own upbringing, our own experience as individuals is going to influence the kinds of behaviors that you're willing to tolerate. For example, if we think of a circle time, you might have a student that, in the middle of circle time gets up off the carpet and goes and, plays with some other toys. Some of you might think, oh, that child is independent, or they're just making another choice to be comfortable with that. Others of you might feel like that behavior is a sign of defiance, and you might want to bring that child back to the carpet. Neither of those responses are right or wrong, but it does show us how culture and our experiences, the lens through which we see the world, shape how we approach guidance, especially, with the students in our classes. So a few things to think about as far as strategies is, I think the first thing is just to look to redirect. We don't need to engage children in every single moment where they're feeling frustrated. We can simply direct them to a different activity that will, give them a new fresh perspective and hopefully kind of distract them and help them to go in a different direction. We want to give them natural and logical consequences. We want to make sure that those are clear and simple, that we're not being overly complicated with those consequences and that dialogue. We want to avoid timeout. We know from research that timeout is not an effective way to help children change behavior. And then, of course, physical punishment is never going to be appropriate. Just to close, I want to encourage you to encourage your students to take responsibility for their behaviors, to try and get along with their peers and to contribute to the group. We want to sustain a positive climate in our classrooms that focuses on teamwork, on acceptance of everyone, cooperation, and patience, and grace, even when mistakes are made. We want to focus on the children's positive behaviors and their positive traits of all those in our classroom. When we focus on the positive, we see an increase in those positive behaviors. So encourage you to not look at, mistaken behavior from a deficit mindset, but rather than, it's an opportunity to help them learn some new skills that are going to help them to be successful in our classrooms and later in life.